We're live.
We today spoke to Anthony Swain, the fittest of financial nurses. He's based out of Charlotte, North Carolina now, doing real estate, travel nursing. He's been a travel nurse for, I think it was 7. That's the Irish side coming out.
Fire.
He's been doing coaching. He's been doing travel nursing. It was a great episode. He broke down his house hack deal. I think Josh loves numbers, so that was really exciting for Josh.
I love when people tell me numbers. I don't really care to figure them out myself.
Yeah, as our numbers guy, Josh cannot stand figuring them out himself, but he loves asking about the numbers. So Anthony gave us all the numbers, and it was great. So
this is a fun one.
Have a good listen.
Have a good listen. That's his new thing. I don't know why that sounds so dumb.
Well, welcome to the Investing RN podcast. Today we are joined by Anthony Swain, a travel nurse for over 7 years. He got married at some point along that journey. I don't know if that was before or after, but now you're getting into some real estate stuff, doing some financial coaching. Sounds like you got a lot going on. You've been all over the country, and we're excited to have you here on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for the warm welcome. It's great to meet you guys in person. You know, I know we've kind of communicated back and forth on social media, so it's nice actually getting to talk in real life. But so my wife and I've been a travel nurse since 2016, on and off, and then I met my wife in Maryland, and we started kind of picking up travel nursing together, which was really cool. We got to kind of explore some of the country, and during the pandemic, we went through that together. So that was nice having someone, not to do it alone. We did benefit. We went through, going through the crisis contracts and things like that. And I feel like that kind of was like a major stepping stone and to the direction I'm in now. Just realizing that, going through that, healthcare professionals were making a lot of money, and they, often had no idea what to do with it other than maybe some extravagant excursions and vacations and some luxury items. But last year I kind of went through the journey of just sharing that, sharing my passion for it. And that led to coaching, which was great. And we could get into that a little bit more, but.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I know it's kind of a joke. We made a video of it not too long ago. Jennifer, my sister, she was kind of poking fun at all the Louis Vuittons that kind of showed up in the middle of the pandemic. Nurses like all of a sudden just started sporting the expensive bags.
I heard the nickname and it always stuck with me, the Bandemic. For like what some nurses were like flaunting coming in for their shifts. Like, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to spend your money on, but it was just funny seeing like nurses rolling up with like they're decked out like head to toe designer like Louis or Gucci.
This episode is sponsored by All Day Investments. If you would like to get your start in real estate investing, but don't want to deal with toilets or tenants, we have several new opportunities that might interest you. Head over to alldayinvestments.co/invest or follow the link in our show notes to book a call with our team.
Jen, my wife, who's Josh's sister, she got her first Louis during the pandemic, and we didn't go too crazy with it. I mean, that was it. It was just like an anniversary gift. But we definitely, the pandemic and travel nursing in general was good to us in the sense of like the two of us doing it together, because that's how I met her. Actually, I was on a travel assignment. She was staff, and I scooped her up and brought her along with me. And so we did some travel assignments together.
Tricked her.
Yeah.
That's what he says. He tricked
I tricked her. Yeah. But yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's so powerful to be able to do that together as a couple.
Yeah. I think, we'll probably maybe get into this later, but in a sense, you're almost kind of house hacking and living frugally just by nature of it, because you're splitting it with someone else. Like a lot of travel nurses or, just anyone for that matter is going alone. So, they're fronting their, tax home stuff, and then they're fronting a new place. But if you're traveling with your significant other and they're also a traveling healthcare professional, you're probably like doubling your income and then also cutting your expenses in half. And that could be a huge superpower. So kudos to you that you got to experience it. And then get hooked up with a awesome brother-in-law. So
yeah, I know there's a running joke that we would have found each other eventually. Like there's just such a connection that we have. Yeah. It was destined to happen at some point.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was like that house hack thing, like during the pandemic, and we started the travel assignment right before the pandemic. but there were 5 of us nurses. So it was my wife and I, and we were living with 3 other nurses in a like condo, I guess, during that pandemic when rates were like higher than they've ever been. So yeah, definitely bit of a house. And we had an apartment back in LA that we were renting out. So it was like, there's ways to do it. It wasn't comfortable, but there's definitely ways to do it.
So you've been traveling since 2016. How long did you work as a nurse before that?
Yeah, so I started, just a little background. I started in 2014, pretty much went right from high school to nursing school, did the 4-year program, got my bachelor's, started at a hospital really even close to where I went to college and everything. So it's kind of like I never moved. It was just one location for a while. And that is kind of what led me to travel nursing. I was just like, there has to be more out there than just my hometown. So initially it was just to like get away and experience something. So I actually took my first travel assignment down in South Carolina, and then ended up going out to California myself and then back to Maryland. That's where I met Chris. But early on when I started, it was funny because there wasn't all these extra tools, that got popular after the pandemic, all these different agencies, different resources to use, even Airbnb and Furnish Finder like weren't a thing. So I remember finding housing through Craigslist and like Facebook ads. And yeah, I was literally just showing up the day of or like the weekend before the assignment, like knocking on the door, like, hey, I'm your Craigslist tenant. So it is like so different than what it was back then.
Yeah.
So what did your finances look like going from staff nurse to travel nurse? So, I mean, I think we've had some people on here, but they don't really like talk about the details. Like, did it double your salary? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing I will definitely be a huge advocate for is, nurses, other healthcare professionals, definitely take care, do the travel, assignments for a little while just to experience it. And you could massively leverage that to kind of set yourself up for success later, whether that's paying off debt, kind of investing more, saving more. So I think almost everyone should do it, depending on your circumstance, or kind of like you knew what you wanted to do right away. But anyone that's kind of iffy, make that jump as soon as you kind of have the experience to do it. But to kind of take a look at what I was making for my staff job, I think I was making about $1,400 every 2 weeks. That was back in 2014. And taking my first travel assignment, I think I was making $1,800 every week take home. So it was almost, even more than doubling, what my pay kind of was looking like. And then since I was splitting housing, things like that, I didn't have a huge overhead. So I think if anyone could do that to get started, you're going to have a lot more cash flow. So I think that was a huge jump.
What did you do with all that extra cash right away? Did you like ball out for a little while?
and that's what when I made this social media account, it was like to kind of help people on their journey. Like, I want you to have fun. I want you to, use that money for extra experiences and like making your overall life better. But you also have to have a plan in place, because I'm pretty sure my first like 2 assignments, I didn't save a single dollar. I'm pretty sure I was just like comping friends' meals, like, oh, I got this, or, going out like 3-4 times a week. So if you don't have a plan, it is so easy for that money to escape you. That's why it's so good to have written goals. If you can follow a budget and at least just have a plan for what you're going to do with that money. I'm not going to ever tell anybody just to be so set and just sticking in the spreadsheets, saving every dollar, because you can only be so frugal before it starts affecting your life. But if you at least have a plan, like, hey, I'm going to save an extra $1,000 a month, or hey, I'm going to max out my IRA, or whatever. At least if you have something building in the background, you're going to save a lot more money than just winging it.
For sure. Yeah. Tracking what you're doing is so powerful. And I'm all for being generous. I love being generous. Like, whenever I golf, I love to treat people. But then just this past summer, I look back on, I want to say it was July, and I was like, I just like spent $3,000 on other people's golf. And I was like, this needs to slow down really fast.
Yeah. Those times when you look back, you're like,
yeah.
Like, generosity is awesome, but like, don't get yourself in trouble also.
Well, that whole thing of like writing out the budget, it was, I think that was a big, like awakening for Jen and I. Was like, we'd been doing okay in nursing. We weren't travel nursing at the time. We were just staff, but credit cards, you get pretty comfortable with making this good income every week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. And you kind of let that income creep happen. And it wasn't until we sat down and just like actually wrote out all our expenses and all our, debts and all that stuff, that it was like, oh, wow, okay, wait, we're not in great shape. Like we need to actually think about this. So you said you did it kind of what, couple years into travel nursing?
Yeah, I would say it was probably like 2 to 3 years in. That's when I really just was like, all right, let me actually like accomplish something with all of this. And then it kind of lined up right when I met Christina, and then the pandemic happened. So then I had already built that knowledge and I was ready to apply it. So I'm glad when the time come where we were making all that extra money, I wasn't figuring it out then. So yeah, that was definitely helpful too. It's just like already kind of doing the groundwork. So then when that money was coming in, at those levels, it was like I actually put it to a good place.
When you sat down and looked at your finances, like did you find that you were in a ton of debt, or what did you see?
Yeah, so actually, this is something that caused me a ton of anxiety, and I've mentioned it several times. Was I went to a private school? I'm first generation college student. None of my parents or their grandparents went to college, so my parents definitely wanted me to go to college, and they were just happy for me to go wherever. So I ended up getting into a private school, and even with the scholarships that I got, and then the financial aid, it still was costly. So I think I almost had 6 figures of student loan debt, and that was just hanging over me. And so that was one thing that I definitely accomplished during the pandemic, was paying nearly all of that off. I think I'm on like the last 10,000,
Nice.
Big accomplishment.
Nice. So you have 10 grand left right now.
Yeah. And now it's to the point where like I kind of pivoted, where I'm not necessarily super worried about that. I'll pay it off over time. I think my monthly payment's like $100 or something.
Yeah.
And they're federal loans, so it's less than 3% interest. Because I got them way back when. So
that's a topic that comes up pretty darn often, is should you pay off all your debt first or start investing? So I had 200 grand of loans when I finished anesthesia school. And everybody was like, oh, pay off your debt. Like, no problem. You'll whatever. But I started investing before I paid it off. And looking back, that was the best decision I could have ever done. But at the time, it's like, you have this mountain of student loans. How do you handle like trying to make financially savvy decisions while still having so much student debt?
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. I think for me, I did kind of start getting the ball rolling for the investing as the student loans were getting paid off, but that was kind of further along the line. To me, it was like I just wanted to tackle that, kind of get that out of the way, and then invest more. And it really did work out, because I was taking out the loans. I was taking down the loans that had like the biggest payments. So then when I freed up that payment, I could use it for something else, because I think at the time I had like 600, I'm sure like $600, $700 monthly student loan payments. So when I was cutting that down to only needing to pay $200-$300, I was able to, invest the extra, things like that. And then during the pandemic, had a lot more disposable income, I should say.
And by this time you had a nice Louis Vuitton to carry all your cash in, right?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Just, because if I needed to make any bets, I had like 10, 20, stacked 20 in the bag, just in case, like Floyd Mayweather.
Oh my goodness.
You said you met your wife in Maryland and she was doing travel nursing. Was she kind of in the same position that you were in when you met her, like in terms of debt and just balling out, or was she?
No, I will say, maybe I truthfully didn't know this at the time, but she was in the most ideal premier, I think, young 20-year-old person's financial setup. She had zero debt.
Oh,
Didn't
wow.
have any student loans, did not have any car debt. Fortunately, like her parents were definitely able to help her along the way. And then her also like working through school. So she was able to have zero. So at least it was just worrying about my side of it. So that helped us kind of double down on our efforts. But yeah, now she's in a situation where she is stepping out of travel nursing. She's getting into the aesthetics field. So she definitely has a little bit lower income now, but potentially more later, and then just better quality of life. So right now our income is slashed a little bit from us both just full on travel assignments, but that's something, hey, we can plan and, set a budget for. Just, anyone else could do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of like every entrepreneurial journey. Like you're going to have to take a pay cut in order to make a lot more later. I think Alex Hormozy talks about that a little bit. He's like, owning a business is potentially one of the most terrifying things you can do because you're putting in so much work right now, hoping that the money is going to show up at some point.
Yeah. And honestly, unfortunately, I think travel nursing is, I think it could be great. Every person could leverage it to have huge benefits in the long run. But I think it's almost just enough where you're okay with just like keeping to do it. Oh, all right, one more contract. There are 2 more contracts. Like, hey, I'm living a great lifestyle. Just I'll suffer a little longer. And the next thing you know, you're doing it for years without a plan, and travel nursing is also something you can't do forever. So I think that's also important to kind of think is like, all right, have a plan for like what's next, because, you definitely can't travel nurse for 20, 25 years,
Yeah. Well,
yeah. We've seen them.
Yeah, that's true. There is some OG ones for sure.
Yeah. And those guys are like, oh man, I worked with one guy who was awesome. He wore cowboy boots and he'd like have his headphones on while he was like going to patients' rooms. And he was just like, he must have been doing it for years and he just did not care. And I was just like, I mean, all right. Like I liked him, but,
Yeah.
But so as far as like the real estate thing, cause that's your main source of investing right now, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say travel nursing, I've pivoted to do local, which is, I think, another great thing that people should look into is seeing if there's any local assignments through the either agencies or through the hospitals themselves, because they actually can be pretty lucrative right now. Because I think they're actually, I think that's kind of like the next wave of where things are heading. Some of these bigger hospitals might be trying to cut out the middleman and hiring their own temporary staff. So I actually did that because it made more sense for me. So I'm actually going with the hospital organization that's here. They have an internal team and it's the same thing, 13 weeks at a time, but you get a higher hourly rate, but no stipends. So you're good with the tax man. And then, you have a little bit more of incentive for that, higher hourly rate.
Well, then there you go. Like the real estate offsets that higher hourly rate. Cause
Yes. Sorry to answer your question. So yeah, diving into it, I'm trying to get into the real estate just because I know the power, that real estate could have in your wealth building journey. So that's kind of my next pivot in my journey now.
Yeah. It's Jen and I are like considering doing some travel assignments right now. And I've been seeing that where like, there's all these per diem assignments through, we used Aya and
Okay.
I'm like seeing the rates, like the daily rates on these per diem assignments when you add up 3 shifts or more than what a lot of these like 13-week assignments are equaling out to. So it's like, yeah, like you said, you can just pick up some like per diem stuff. You don't have to leave your home. Essentially, you can just be comfortable where you're at and still make that money.
Yeah, that's definitely a good option for sure.
Yeah. So as you got into real estate, I guess what I was getting at is like, was that your idea? Did you guys kind of come up with that together, or how did you guys decide to do that?
Oh, bless my wife for dealing with me. So this is definitely an Anthony adventure, but she is along for the journey. So I'm glad to have her by my side, but she is definitely letting me take the reins on this. She is not super interested with it, but she's down for the cause. I did convince her to do the house hack in a multifamily property. So it's not, it's not ideal, but we're delaying that gratification, which I feel is also an important thing. Some people, they see kind of keeping up with the Joneses. They see, their friends getting that nice big house, their first house, or, they see them signing up to get that new SUV and posting it on their, social medias. But it really becomes a trap, because you're just, you're tied to those expenses for as long as you've taken out the loan. And there's, kind of almost no way to get out of it, especially if you're buying like the brand new, already done. So I knew for our first property, or honestly, maybe if we do it like one more time after this, was, to house hack, fixer upper, value add, and kind of use it as a springboard, hopefully to appreciate, learn skills. And then, later, we could get that, nice home that we've been, kind of hoping and dreaming for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know real estate is such a great tool because it forces the delayed gratification. Like when we first got started, I was expecting a lot more cash flow, to be honest. But that has not been the case. But I mean, we're getting cash flow, but then our equity position is just growing so much faster than our cash flow.
Yeah.
So it forces forces a delayed gratification. Like if we were to sell any of our properties right now, which we probably are actually working on selling a couple of them, the amount that we're getting back all at once is so much better than I would have imagined, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like the strategy. I think you see all these things like, some people do really well with like a few deals, but like for what we've been doing, we're just dumping all our money right back into the real estate and growing the portfolio. So it's like, we're like, keep waiting for this day where all of a sudden there's just this amazing amount of cash flow and we can just like, go to Hawaii and sit on the beach. But it's like,
yeah,
as long as we keep reinvesting the money, it's like frustrating. And it's like having to remind yourself like, okay, we are making money off these things, but we're just building our portfolio. And that's why we're not seeing it day to day. But then that plays into the whole nursing thing. And I think like you were saying about the travel nursing, like the money's so good that you kind of get stuck in that. And that's, with CRNAs, I mean, they're making great money too. And travel nurses make good money. So it's not a bad problem to have. And it allows you to like kind of pursue this thing as long as there's a goal in sight. So you're not 25 years down the road with boots and like headphones seeing patients.
Yeah. And, I think if people are wanting to get into real estate, like you said, I think people all, see the social media where they're like, oh, I have 100 doors and $20,000 of cash flow. I mean, it's attainable. There's people doing it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be for everyone, So I think it's just finding what is your goal and like what you realistically are truly going after, and not just like saying, oh, I want 100, I think you mentioned this on a previous podcast, but like I want 100 doors. But I think if you have like a realistic of balance, and that's kind of where I'm at, I want to be balanced where, hey, I have something where maybe I could retire, earlier part-time, because I have built this equity position where it's like, all right, that can be kind of a supplemental retirement, or I have this cash flow. Versus, just trying to get something as quickly as possible. I think real estate, a lot of people think it's a short game, but I think the best real estate investors understand the long game, so you're getting that appreciation, you're getting the amortization of your loans, you're having that cash flow if needed. And then that's where you could, maybe sell and pay off properties, or, there's a lot of strategy that goes in the end. But I think the best investors, buy and hold and hold it for a long time and, take advantage of all of those, aspects of being a real estate owner.
Yeah.
You just did a really good job of explaining our roller coaster of emotions the last few years. we did our first deal and it went great. And they're like, oh my goodness, we're doing this 1 million times in the next 2 years. But no, it's definitely the long game. And we've come to realize that it's definitely.
I think another thing people, I'm not an expert by any means, but just kind of forewarning, people just getting into it. Once again, looking at these social media people making it seem so easy, that there are problems that it can occur. And if you don't have a good financial foundation and basis going into it, you could be in a world of financial trouble if just one or two things goes wrong. So, I mean, having due diligence, having education, having really knowledgeable people to lean on can help mitigate that risk. But if you just go into it thinking real estate is going to change all of my financial problems, that might not be the case. You might have actually a few more financial problems. So
yeah,
I
maybe in 20 years it will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw recently in one of your posts, you broke down this first deal, this Charlotte duplex that you got. Do you mind kind of going through that and how you found it and what the deal looked like?
Yeah. So just binging Bigger Pockets episodes on my commute to work when we were in Maryland before coming here to Charlotte. So I had about an hour ride. So I got through a ton of episodes. And I was like, all right, I know the next step. I got to take action, got to connect with some agents, lenders, did all that. Got super lucky, went on to Bigger Pockets and actually did find an agent through Bigger Pockets that was a rock star, like had so many connections, was doing a ton of transactions. So that she was great to lean on. Name's Angie. She's awesome. If you're in Charlotte looking, Angie Castro, she's a beast. But yeah, so just kind of knowing that we wanted to do the house hack, our options were limited. So it was either the small multifamily or maybe a house that we could do some kind of ADU or mother-in-law suite. And there really wasn't a ton of options, like I mentioned kind of earlier before the show with you guys. So we had to either get creative or honestly pivot. And we actually got under contract on a property and it fell through. because it didn't appraise. It appraised lower than what we had initially offered, and we were going to need to come up with like 20,000 just to close. And the seller was not willing to kind of meet anywhere in the middle. So it was one of those things that we kind of just had to walk away from all the red flags that we saw during the inspection. And then they weren't willing to kind of move their number at all. So we had to move on. And I'm not going to lie, I got pretty discouraged. I thought I was just going to be super easy just from what everyone says. Like, yeah, I'm getting this deal, that deal, this deal. So kind of when we hit that adversity, it was just like, oh man, do I still really want to do this? I just kept telling people, all right, I got to keep trying. It'll go through. So we ended up finding this particular duplex. It had been sitting on the market for a while. And for whatever reason, when I initially looked at it, I kind of didn't think twice about it. I was like, I don't really, like where it's at and the price. And then it actually was a price decrease. They dropped the price. So then it made me look at it again. And then I was like, wait a minute. As I kind of got to know Charlotte more, I was like, this is an excellent location. It's near the light rail. There's tons of restaurants nearby, easy access to the highway. You can get to pretty much any neighborhood in like 5 to 10 minutes. I was like, wow, this is actually kind of a gem, and it's value add. So we ended up just putting in some lower, than asking offers, kind of got into just some negotiations, and we were able to get it under contract. So it really did work out. So, I mean, there is still potential for finding on-market deals. It's just you have to look for, these properties that may have been sitting for whatever reason. Maybe they have tenants inside of them. Maybe the property is a little rougher on the edges. And that's when you actually can do some negotiations versus a place that's already completely redone. That price is probably already baked in, and, they probably don't have much wiggle room. There's going to be some other buyer that's waiting to get it. And so we got it, I think at five or 10,000 under asking price. And then, along the process, we were able to negotiate some seller credits that completely covered the closing cost. And we were able to get that new Fannie Mae 5% down loan. So we really had little cash to close in the deal. And kind of the bulk of our money now is just going towards renovations. But after renovations, it's going to be like a whole new property. And we're excited to kind of rent it out on a premium, doing like the midterm rentals, short-term rentals.
Nice.
Yeah. So how much did you pay for that property, and then how much were you expecting to bring in to renovate it?
And if you don't mind, if you don't mind, like what was it listed at, and what did you offer? Because I know those kind of like lowball offers scare a lot of people, and I'm on the deal flow side of things, so it's tough.
So it was listed at 585, and then we actually offered 540 in the beginning. And as we were going to see the property, we thought for private showing, the seller agent actually brought another investor. So there was another competing offer the same day. Like I remember like thinking, are we even going to get this property? We might actually lose it on the last minute. So we actually had to go slightly above the other investor. So we ended up getting it for 560. And then, so that was the price we're in at. Total renovations, I think we're going to be in around 35 to 40,000. But the comps that we chose, they're 660 to 670, but our place actually has a bigger lot and bigger square footage. So it's not a home run deal, I don't think, but there's still the value add. And it's just, I think I heard this saying, it was like, if it's easy to buy, hard to sell, hard to buy, easy to sell. So I think in the long run, there's slim to none of those duplexes around. And in that location, I don't think there's really a huge downslide for the property, just because, there's so much interest in people wanting to buy those duplexes to house hack. So I think once we have it fixed up, I think it should appraise pretty well.
Yeah.
What are you expecting to rent the other side for once it's done?
In that area, I see them going for honestly nearly $3,000 a month for 2 bedrooms. But I think realistically, we do want to start off slightly lower, just to kind of undercut the competition a little bit, just to get our first tenants in there, kind of get used to the flow of things, get some reviews under our belt. And then average nightly rates, I think anywhere from like 150 to 200. So there's some Airbnbs performing in that area, like 4,000 to 5,000 a month for 2 bedrooms.
super solid. So I'm guessing your mortgage is somewhere around $3,000 a month, something like that, right?
Yeah, I think our total payment with taxes, insurance, $3,500. Because we were able to get a rate buy down too with the seller credits, so that helps also initially. We're hoping we can refinance later this year.
So even if you don't rent it for more than your mortgage is worth, you're living on the other side for essentially what sounds like it's going to be $500 a month. Whereas if you're renting, you'd be paying $3,000 a month.
Yeah. So I think it's not going to totally eliminate our cost of living, but it's definitely going to decrease it, especially coming down from these furnished rentals that we were doing like while we were on assignment. So it's definitely going to help, considering going from like paying $2,500, $3,000 for a furnished place. And now we're going to have a place of our own, for maybe like $1,000, $1,500, with utilities and all that.
Yeah.
That's great. So that's like a perfect house hack type situation. And then when you move out, you'll be able to rent the other side for another $2,500, $3,000, and then you're cash flowing a couple grand a month.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
That's in a vacuum, if no problems exist, that would be that would be amazing. And I'm sure there will be some bumps in the road along the way, but I almost take kind of this first property as like also just like a learning lesson.
Oh, yeah.
So anything that we kind of happens along the way, all right, this is what I could do better the next time to not deal with those issues. Or hey, maybe now I know how much this renovation costs. Now when I'm looking at properties, I can kind of calculate that in to things beforehand.
Yeah.
Right. And then in 20 years, it's worth 1.2 million just on the trajectory of housing prices the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and the cool thing is too, with that lot, it's, we mentioned zoning before. It's zoned as N1D, which is, it actually can potentially have a fourplex on it. So it could either have two separate duplexes or it could have like a fourplex on it. So in the future, if we ever felt like getting too crazy, we could like potentially develop on it. So that's something to always think about too, is figuring out your zoning to see like what the potential also has, that like maybe the previous seller just had no idea that, they could have built an ADU in the backyard or they could have put it on an attached, building of some sort. So like investors can get really creative. You can think outside the box and find ways to find deals for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier the seller credit and the rate buy down. Can you explain that a little more?
So yeah, I actually got a few of those questions after I posted some of the reels and videos. So anybody that's new, that's like trying to figure out what all that means, it's basically, when it comes time for negotiations, there is a little bit of back and forth. You may offer a price, they may come back to you with something, hey, you do your due diligence, and then you maybe have to negotiate again. And instead of maybe asking the seller to come down on their price, maybe $15,000 to $20,000, which may be unrealistic. They may just say, heck no, absolutely not. They may be stuck on a price. Having those seller credits is a way to essentially kind of maybe do a repair or, have less cash to close. And, that $15,000 to $20,000 I kind of learned doesn't really affect your mortgage a ton. I think, if we had not gotten the seller credits and we had just asked for the price to be dropped down, we'd have had to come to the table with more cash to close. And then our monthly payment was only like maybe $100 more, which in the grand scheme of things, like if you're using that money that you didn't use to cash to close and starting some of the renovations, I mean, you're already kind of getting your money back for, especially if you plan on refinancing later. That was our thought process, is like we're at pretty high rates and I think they'll come down slightly. I don't think they're going to go down to like the 3s to 2s like we saw during the pandemic. But I think realistically 5 to 6 is pretty healthy. So I think if you plan on refinancing at all, it could be a good idea to look into those seller credits, because they could be more helpful, honestly, in the kind of long run.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we've done that a couple times. So you just have to get the property just has to appraise at the top dollar price for you to be able to get the seller credits.
Yes, that too. And there's a certain percentage. I think it might be like 2% of the total price is what the seller credits would be. So like you can't have like a $200,000 property and be like, oh yeah, I got 30,000 of seller credits. They won't allow that. I think 2% is the cap. So that's something to kind of keep in mind too.
Yeah. Be excited to see how that goes. I guess
I'm so stoked for the before and afters. I'm so stoked for the before and afters.
I think the one last tip for this applies more to like men and husbands from what we've seen, but like, how did you convince your wife to do a house hack when she didn't want to? Or maybe she did, but like, how'd you sell it?
Oh man, I think I was like showing her pictures of places that were much nicer, and then when I realized the price. When I realized it was the bait and switch. When I realized the prices of some of those, like, already all done up properties, the numbers weren't working out. And I was like, honestly, I think value add is going to be the best bang for our buck. So then when I started showing these properties, I had to really sell her on, hey, this is what it could look like, showing her Pinterest boards and then showing her like the location. Oh, babe, look how close it is to the nail salon, and look how close it is to the dog park, just selling her on the location. So she eventually was on board, and I told her, hey, it doesn't have to be a forever thing. So that was another thing. It's just, this could be, 2-3 years, we'll see how, when the time comes, but it definitely doesn't have to be a house where we have to be in for a long, long time.
Yeah. Well, and then once they get involved, I mean, they're like just so many things like that. Once you have that kind of team in place, I'm sure your strengths balance each other well. So it's like, it'll probably,
she's helping.
I was going to say it'll probably be a better curated spot thanks to her.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I was just like, honestly, I've been handling all these numbers, like hiring the contractors, all of that. But she has been so helpful for the design, because I literally was like, babe, I have no idea.
Yeah. So you took the appropriate route. I took the route of I'm not going to tell her when I'm buying, and then I'll show her the end product and she'll be so proud of me. Just kidding. I don't recommend that to most people.
Yeah. And then when I go over to the place now to like, kind of get step-by-step of how the, construction's going and things like that, she'll be like, do you have any pictures and videos? And I'm like, oh no, I didn't take it, because it's like still like half getting worked on. I'm like, you're only going to see it when it's finished.
I thought you just meant because you forgot, because for a couple of our first projects, like I'm in LA, Josh is in Wisconsin, and all of our properties so far in Wisconsin. So I'd be like, hey, you're going to go look at the property today? He'd be like, yeah. Later the afternoon, I'd be like, all right, how was it? Like, do you got pictures? Oh, I forgot to take pictures.
It was good. Property was good.
Yeah,
that's
good.
Yeah.
Looks good.
All right, man. Thanks.
I can only imagine, because you're like probably excited to see pictures about it too. And I'm just like, oh, I'm excited, but it's bad for you.
You're like, yeah, I saw it. It was great. And I'm like, well, what did it look like? No idea.
So I was going to say, so you're there in Wisconsin, so you can kind of be a boots on the ground a little bit. So it's not like true out of state investing, but it is for you. But you're kind of relying on Josh. He's your boots on the ground guy.
Kind of.
Yeah, so I'm pretty worthless. It's basically out of state investing for college.
I mean,
that was the plan. It was for me to go see properties when I needed to, and I haven't done that a whole lot.
But now we have
how many properties do you guys have now?
We have 6 or 7. So we've kind of shuffled our portfolio a bit, because we sold like 4 or 5 in the last year, and then we bought a couple more mobile home parks. So we have
8 in the business.
Yeah, we're at 72 doors, I think, over 8 properties.
Wow, that's awesome. So you guys have some like multifamily then too.
Yeah.
Well, mobile home parks.
Yeah.
So we have 19, 20, and 24 pad mobile home parks. So that's where most of the numbers come from.
Yeah.
Whereas rents are a lot lower on those. It's like average of what, 350, 400 per month.
Something like that.
So it's not like extravagant numbers, even with that many doors.
Now, did you guys hire any mentors or anything?
So I joined GoBundance. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
There's a lot. It's basically a mentorship group. There's a lot of people in there that have given me like a helpful hand that I am extremely grateful for. And then we were at WealthCon. that's fun.
I'm laughing because it's like we for like, we've been doing this like 3.5 years, 4 years almost, and like for the first 3 years we were just like, okay, we need to just figure this out. We're not going to invest in coaching. We're gonna do this. Then in July we hired a business coach, and then and that's been solid. Then we went to WealthCon and got swindled into joining their program, and it's like just like.
So we did like nothing for 3 years, and then in the last year we've spent like $65,000 in coaching. And
yeah,
like, that was probably a lot all at once.
And the timing of it is like
Oh, sorry, I cursed on the podcast.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's okay.
That's how I feel too about that amount of money. But it's like it's good. Like we're 100% for hiring coaching, and even like these higher ticket coaches, as long as you can afford it and you're not going to put yourself in a bad spot. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Colin was the biggest hesitation why we didn't do that earlier. I joined Go Abundance on my own. I was like, well, shoot, I'm doing this. Like, forget you, Colin. I know I'm right. So I joined it and I saw how helpful it was. And I'm extremely grateful to have been able to afford that. Because then Colin kind of saw all of the motivation that come from it and all the help that we were able to get from it.
Wow, that's really great that you guys, have felt the positive impact from it. I think anyone that's listening to this and, thinking about hiring a coach, I would just make sure you're definitely vetting them, and making sure it is definitely exactly what you want. Have that social proof that they're actually really are helping people. Because I know there are programs out there that definitely overpromise and underdeliver. So just definitely do your research. And I would say, honestly, first off, if you're trying to get into real estate or even investing, it's just connecting with other like-minded people, going to these meetups, following accounts, like ours, or listening to this podcast, because you can pick up a lot of stuff and get that ball rolling without necessarily having to pay for like a high ticket course right off the bat. So like do that first, figure out kind of what niche you want to go into, and then maybe kind of do your research, check out options. But honestly, you might come upon a mentor. I think, just going to these things, connecting with people, legitimately like showing that you want to learn and have kind of like a way to provide value back, you might be able to get a mentor for free, So I think kind of evaluate those options first before you like think maybe paying for a huge ticket course is just going to solve everything. Because ultimately it comes down to how much work you're willing to put in. So that's just perspective for something to think about. Is
even in these courses and stuff, like it's like there's a lot of people that join and then leave after the first year because they're not committed to it. So even after you join these things, it's all on you. You can't just expect people to like hold your hand the entire way.
But to your point, like I do think like, we did our first several deals just from like listening to Bigger Pockets and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And like, even like you said, these real estate meetups, you could find a mentor there, and it doesn't take much in terms of coaching. Like we went with a coach more just because like to like learn the business side and get our actual business like dialed in. But I think the big piece of it is like the accountability piece. That's what we needed as a team, because there's 3 of us and it's family. So we were just like kind of seeing it potentially going down a path where, relationships could have possibly been harmed. And it's like, we just wanted to avoid all that. So it's like, but it's like anything else. It's like,
clearly we're fine. Right?
Yeah. But if you don't address those things,
precautionary.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's smart.
Yeah. It wasn't like there was like, we're getting into huge fights and stuff like that. But it's like, we saw the business growing, and with a growing business, you have, just headaches and drama. And it's like, had we not addressed things when we did, it could have developed into something bad. So, but like you said, you don't have to go out and get that big ticket, like high price coach right away. It's not for you. And if you're just trying to get your first deal, like there's plenty of information out there without having to pay for coaching.
Right. Later, maybe once you find your niche, you could join a mastermind, take an extra course, maybe hire, one-on-one or group coaching. But I think what you guys are doing, at least getting those systems in place, I think a lot of people don't think about that too, is like if they plan to scale, is start making the systems now while you're small, because it's a lot easier to get going than like once you get big or kind of in over your head, it's going to be a lot harder to like figure out how can I make systems to kind of keep me out of the business rather than like working in the business.
I wish we had written down everything that we were doing when we bought our first deal. I wish we wrote it down back then, because now that we have like 8 properties, it's like write down what we're doing now is a lot more. So if you start early, just writing down what you're doing, because then at some point you can hand it off to somebody else to do for you a lot easier,
right?
Than if you're like already doing big things, then trying to incorporate somebody in.
And going back to like the nursing side of things, it's like documentation is so huge in nursing. It's like we get that like drilled into us in nursing. Like you have to document. And then we got into like this real estate thing, didn't document anything for a long time. And it's like, like he's saying, like going back, and it's like, even just like profit and loss statements for the year. It's like, if you just do them as you go, and we've gotten better about like when we write a check, we document it. But before it was like, we're writing all these checks and doing all these rehabs and all this stuff. And we get to the end of the year and we're like going back trying to figure out like, well, who'd you write this check to in July? It just says gas. And it's like, I don't know, like that's not my handwriting. So it's like,
gosh,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it's
exactly.
so important.
Great point.
Yeah.
And the softwares and stuff now that are available, it's almost like, just use them. You know, it's just like taking half the battle, off your hands.
Yeah.
It's like and like some of them you have to pay for, but it's like cheaper than Netflix. Sort of like, come on, just buy it.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Oh, and it's definitely worth it because the amount of hours you'll spend back charting. I guess I don't know if back charting is the right word for real estate, but
yeah, your bookkeeper.
Everybody knows what we're talking about.
Your bookkeeper or your CPA will very much thank you and not cast spells on you once.
Or they'll charge you $300 an hour to do it for you. So it's like, in the long run, you're going to save money. But
for sure.
But you mentioned earlier that you're doing some coaching. So what does that look like?
No, so you know what? It's funny because Instagram right now is like shadow ban me. It will not let me change my name. So right now it still says coach for nurses. But honestly, right now I'm kind of pivoting. I really just want to dial into real estate and just doing and learning as much as possible. And I kind of realized the coaching, it did interfere with that. And I had done it last year. I think I coached 24 nurses one-on-one. It took up a lot of time. And it was something I was passionate about, but it was something at the ultimate day I knew would take away from my time from doing, some of this stuff with the real estate. So I kind of have pivoted for now. It's something I could come back to, once I kind of have some more real estate transactions under my belt and maybe just a little bit more comfortable and established. But I think now just like learning and kind of hitting the ground running, I just want to have the most time available for that. So I'm happy to share on my social media, like personal finance tips, things for travel nurses to use, what I'm learning as I go in real estate, but it's not necessarily to monetize it at this point.
What was what did the coaching look like for the nurses that you were doing last year?
So yeah, I was kind of winging it. I took a good amount of time to write an ebook. I feel like I did things kind of backwards. I made a digital product before I even had a presence, but I was eventually able to sell, I think, almost 200 copies of it when I did releases. So that was kind of cool. So hopefully, 200 nurses or, other people out there got to learn from it. And then the coaching just sprang from people when I was like posting financial stuff. They were just, my inbox was full. If I was posting me at a restaurant, something like that, like no one cared, but when I would post like, this is, thus and thus IRA, or, you should invest in S&P 500, or, hey, you should use real estate. There's so many questions in my inbox, and it just made me think like, I feel like a lot of people are like striving for these answers. They just like, are unsure where to look, or, they're not confident enough to make the decisions on their own. And that's what kind of inspired me. So then I started kind of just putting that I did coaching out there, and people would message me like, how much do you charge? So then I had to kind of start making a program. So I kind of had an outline that I would go through, and I would assess them, kind of see what their strengths, weaknesses were, go over their financial picture. So, I mean, it was pretty cool in that aspect because, I did really help a lot of people. But I did start to notice it was kind of like the same things over and over in the early stages. So I think even in the future, I think I would rather work with people that are like maybe how I was like a year or two ago, where I was ready to take the next step, like, hey, buying real estate, or just like doubling down on entrepreneurship. So I think if I was to coach again, it would probably be something more along those lines. And maybe even doing in a group, just because I feel like you could teach more of the same topic to more people. So that's kind of where I'm at now, but it was great. And I mean, you can still follow my page. I'm still going to post, hopefully helpful information.
Yeah, well, that explains where the name came from, the financially fit RN, right? Or
yes.
Nurse. Wait,
yes, financially fit nurse, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, we'll plug it again at the end, and we'll have it in all the show notes and all that stuff.
Yeah, we'll have to throw the ebook in there too.
It's been a while since I promoted it. It's still there. It's funny enough, I hadn't promoted it probably for at least 6 months to a year. And the other day, I like randomly got 2 notifications that it was bought. I was like, who found this book? But I guess,
like, yes, another Louis.
So, I mean, it's kind of cool. That's like passive income in a way. And I know there's people out there making a lot of money off of digital products. I would just say, anyone that's looking to do it, just make sure you have the right intentions. in the forefront, and it'll definitely help you be successful. Like really kind of coming up with something that could help somebody versus just like trying to make money off of something.
Yeah. Just because you mentioned a bunch of different investing strategies. So what other kind of investing are you involved in?
So I built a pretty decent portfolio to my standards, kind of where I'm at in life. And that I feel like is a good kind of like foundation that even if things kind of get array with real estate is, I have that, versus if like I had nothing and then you're like throwing it all into real estate and then that doesn't work out, then you're back to kind of nothing. So I'm happy I have that foundation set, but now I'm kind of pivoting to use more of my capital towards real estate and acquiring bigger assets. But at the time, I don't say real estate doesn't have to be for everyone. So if you just want to invest, if you're investing in those retirement accounts, kind of maximizing those in the long run, there's a huge track record of people becoming wealthy. If your time horizon's long, and you're maxing out, you're coming close. If you're investing a decent portion of your income over time, that is going to compound and grow, and you'll probably be able to have a pretty comfortable retirement. So I think it's just finding the balance for people that just want that. They want to be passive. They just want to focus on work or, other things in life. You don't really have to dive into all of these other investments. I would say real estate is more of an advanced to expert kind of strategy. I wouldn't advertise for the beginner just with no investments, anything like that, to just be like, yeah, I'm gonna go into real estate and just go all in. But that's just me. I'm sure there's people out there that have done it, but I wouldn't advise it. So I would say kind of build your foundation, get that first 100,000 maybe invested or saved up, and then you can kind of go from there making moves.
Yeah,
I know that's so we kind of preach like the whole financial like peace movement, I guess. Like if that's what gives you your peace is like having these stock accounts or whatever builds, if that's what gives you your peace, then go for it. But we like the real estate because we've seen how powerful it can really be.
Right.
And we know that all the stuff that we're doing is going to far outpace what happens in the market. So
right.
That's why we're kind of like preaching the real estate stuff. Just get into it. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, but keep pushing on because it's in my mind, it's got to be the most powerful advantage.
The ROI, return on investment, can absolutely dwarf, just the stock market and kind of index funds, but it's not for everybody.
Substantially more work also.
Yes, it takes work and it takes knowledge kind of going outside of your comfort zone. But if you're willing to do that, you could definitely get that extra return for sure.
Yeah. I think it's funny because it's like, you obviously know a lot more about like investing in the stock market and all that. But like for me, I
know how to lose money at it.
For me, it was just like real estate was made so much more sense to me. I like the idea of like a tangible asset. And it's just like, okay, if I buy this house and I put this amount of money into it, I can make this much in rent or I can sell it for this much. So like in my case, it was like, yeah, it did make more sense. But that's just because I don't know much about the other types of investing. So that's why we started a podcast, so we could bring people on to teach us.
No, I think there is a place for it. I think if you can eventually kind of convert maybe some of that real estate, kind of wealth you're building into some of these, kind of index funds and things like that. Because they're the ultimate passive investing. Like you don't have to do a thing and you can sit back and collect dividends and returns. So I think it's finding a balance. You can get to that point of, I've reached financial freedom. Now I'm into wealth preservation, and you can kind of, move some things around. But I think real estate and kind of using leverage, using those things gives you the greatest potential to reach financial freedom and reach it early. I think really anyone, if they're investing for 40 years, could probably, have accumulated a good amount of money. But, a lot of people, they maybe don't want to work for 40 to 50 years. I feel like our generation is more wanting to enjoy life, maybe being part-time in their 40s and or sooner. So I think to even, make that even an opportunity, a chance, you do have to take some risk and, go outside of the box and work a little harder. And real estate is one of those things where you could put in the work, whether it be knowledge, finding deals, coming up with cash, learning, how to improve a property, things like that. It's things you could force appreciation, and definitely gives you a lot of value.
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely.
Yeah. All right, it's time for the final five, I guess. Here we go.
Final five.
All right.
Yeah, it was the final four, and then we kept asking a bonus question, and we're just like, let's just change the name.
Yeah. All right. So number one is, what's the top financial resource that you found for nurses, whether it's a book or podcast?
Investing RN podcast 1.
That's yes, obviously.
You're our favorite guest, automatically.
Obviously, no brainer.
Yeah.
2, 3. I really liked all the stuff on the Bigger Pockets, whether you're just listening to Bigger Pockets Real Estate or The Rookie, or I think there's actually Bigger Pockets Money podcast. So, I mean, whatever you kind of want to choose and go into, I think all of those podcasts have a ton of great information. One of my favorite books is Set for Life by Scott Trench. I think, that's that kind of mindset of building the financial foundation and then kind of choosing the path you want to go, whether it's just building wealth over, a really long period of time, just investing in the stock market and things like that. Or, hey, if you want to go into real estate and dive into that and maybe have financial freedom earlier, I think that could definitely help people, honestly, just from the basics all the way to, how you could reach early financial freedom. So I would say those are definitely great resources. And then following any of us and following other kind of personal finance people, real estate people that you vibe with and connect with, I think will put you in the right direction.
Yeah.
So the Bigger Pockets podcast, it's come up a few times. So I'm just going to explain to people what that is, because most people probably don't know it. So it's like a wannabe investing RN podcast.
Yeah. It's knockoff. It's the great value investing RN podcast.
Oh, they're the OG.
They're the OGs, yeah.
But you guys are like 2.0. You're like the next gen.
There we go.
We're Bigger Pockets. We're like the Bigger Pockets for nurses.
We're the Bigger Pockets GPT.
No, but all right. Number 2, what advice would you give yourself as a new grad?
New grad, I would say get into a specialty that will give you a lot of experience. Stick with it for that year to 2 years. Do travel nursing. Kind of test the waters with that. See if it's for you, because it also could be not for everybody. But if it is, make that money, leverage that money, and use it to pay off debt, save, start investing, and that could really propel you kind of to that next phase of your life where you maybe do some entrepreneurship, maybe scale back nursing, dive into some other things. Having that financial cushion definitely sets you up for success. So use travel nursing to your advantage.
Nice.
All right. What is your big goal for the next 12 months? I think I saw you do a video on this already, but go for it again.
Yeah. So next 12 months, is just getting this duplex that we bought stabilized, rented out. And then from there, I do, still have some aspirations of getting some more properties in 2024. So if we could burr another deal or two, I would be really happy, as like our kind of first full year in real estate investing, and then kind of take it from there. I'm sure along the way we'll connect with some people and maybe I'll get steered in a direction. But for right now, it's just kind of getting that property situated, stabilized, and then just taking it from there, learning and taking action.
Are you going to move into the second one, or are you planning to move every year?
So yeah, we're going to stay in this property. Probably, honestly, I would think for the 2 years to try to take advantage of that tax benefit. But if not, we'll probably kind of just try to keep using these primary loans, house hack, and just go from there until my wife gets tired of it, and then we'll have to buy a single family forever home, probably.
Forever home.
When boss lady says it's done.
Yeah.
Are you planning on selling it when you leave? Or are you going to keep it?
So that's another thing I would recommend anyone is when you're going into these real estate transactions, have exit strategies, more than one exit strategy. So for us, if the property appreciates enough and we're at a position where we think we could sell it for a good profit, we would maybe consider selling. Or, I think we will still cash flow. We'll definitely cash flow with us moving out of it, that we can just continue renting it and just honestly hold on to the property for as long as we want. So I think having multiple strategies definitely puts you in a position where you're not just glued to one thing, and if it doesn't work out, you're kind of stuck.
Okay. So staying in there 2 years, you're just giving yourselves the option to sell if you want to.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I was like, it doesn't help you if you don't plan on selling.
Right. Yeah. So I think just to have that option is the reason why I would stay in it for 2 years. And then honestly, just to keep saving money. We're still just the two of us. So we don't have a big family yet. So we're like, we don't have to necessarily upgrade our lifestyle yet.
Yeah. I'm about to have a family of 6. So
you need that big
you'll get
house.
there one day.
You need that big single family house.
Man.
You can't do that in a duplex.
I'm still trying to convince my wife to let me like Airbnb the basement, and I'm gonna get there. I'm working on it still.
Your kids could be the cleaning crew. You don't even need cleaners.
Exactly.
Oh, that's genius. Pay them like $5, and that's like the most money they've ever seen.
And then you can put it in their custodial IRAs.
Dude, you guys are set up for it perfect too, because Nicole loves to clean. Like
she does. She's Polish. She she dreams about like mopping. I see her at night like waking up and she's like this, like mopping.
So number 4 is, if you were to tell people to do one thing right now that could change their financial outlook, what would that be?
One thing, I would say just networking. Surround yourself with people that are in a position where you want to be in. It may hurt. You may kind of realize, your circle, maybe not where you want to be. I think that Jim Rohn saying is, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So, keep that in mind. Are people that are in your inner circle, are they challenging you? Are they pushing you? Are they helping you? Or are they trying to get to the same goals as you? I think that'll definitely benefit you. And then outside of that, just financial planning, having a good financial plan, and just being cognizant of the decisions you're making.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. And 5th question. What's the biggest financial mistake that you've made?
Biggest financial mistake. I think not investing sooner. So I think if you meet any real estate investor, they're probably going to tell you, I wish I, bought 2 more of those houses back in 2017. So I think, I don't know why I gave him an accent too. So
I was gonna say, you sound a lot older than 2017.
But I think just starting sooner, making these choices to educate and learn and take action sooner is going to get that snowball rolling. Because I think early on, I think I was maybe afraid to invest. I didn't even know what investing was. I think I had cashed out an old 401k. I had pulled money out of my IRA because I just didn't take the time to educate myself and feel confident to make the decisions. And I think if people could do that sooner, start investing, start saving for their future sooner, then they're going to be much better in the long run.
Yeah.
Great. All right. And where can people find you one last time?
Find me on Instagram, Financially Fit Nurse. Right now, I share a lot of real estate tips that I'm learning along the way. House hacking, going to do midterm rentals, short-term rentals, and then just some other personal finance and travel nurse things. So if you think that could be helpful, you know where to find me, and feel free to connect. Shoot me a message. I'm happy to talk.
And the ebook.
I'll give you in the show notes.
Like, what ebook?
But the Travel Nurse's Guide to Personal Finance. So if you can find out in the interwebs, hit me up for a special Investing RN pod discount.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
and you said once Instagram lifts its restrictions, you're changing. Oh, you're not changing your name, just the coaching piece.
Yeah. Because right now it says money coach for nurses. So I just feel like I'm not money coaching for nurses. So I'm just going to change it to something else, travel RN, real estate investor, or something like that.
Nice. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today. It's been fun.
Yes. Thank you guys for having me on the show. It's great meeting you. No early exit now, so we're good.
Now we're done. We're done when we say we're done. No, I'm just
kidding. You can leave when I say you can leave. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.